Hello and welcome to the live stream. So, JD Vance has a window of opportunity to, he has to make a decision. Is he going to stand by Trump? Is he going to leak the Epstein files? I don't see how he could possibly win the 2028 election if he does plan to continue on to try to be president. Like, how could he possibly win the 2028 election if he doesn't leak the Epstein files, honestly? And I'm not even the one who brought this up. I saw the comments and I agreed with these people. I saw comments where people said, like, oh, this looks bad for JD Vance, right? With Trump in the scandal, the Epstein scandal. It does look bad for JD Vance because, like, we don't know, is he in on it? Is that why Trump picked JD Vance to be the VP? Is because JD Vance was going to help Trump cover up the Epstein stuff, right? So, guess time will tell. Why did Donald Trump pick JD Vance to be his VP? Is JD Vance trying to cover up for the election for the Epstein files? Is that why? Is JD Vance one of them? Is he an Epstein guy? So I think it's shady that Mr. Donald Trump picked JD Vance to cover up for the Epstein stuff. If JD Vance doesn't leak the Epstein files, then it looks like JD Vance is complicit. What does everybody think? Should JD Vance leak the Epstein list? Should he leak it? You think he should leak the Epstein files? I think he should. Hello, welcome, Carolyn Davis. Thank you for your comment. You said that's hilarious. It is hilarious. Thank you. Welcome, Kathy. Thank you for your comment. She says not gonna happen. You don't think it's gonna happen? You don't think JD Vance will leak the files? Canada, we need to activate our Canadian mole. I'm sure Canada has to have a Canadian mole in the White House. If not, then what are we paying our stupid CSIS for, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service? What are we paying them for if they don't have a mole in the White House? It's so easy for a Canadian to get in the White House, you know what I mean? Like we speak the same language, we both speak English, we can do American accents, right? Hi, no, I can't do an American accent, but there are Canadians that can do American accents, so we can look and walk and talk like Americans. There's gotta be a Canadian mole in the White House that can leak the Epstein files for everyone. I can't really do accents, but I'm gonna try my best American accent. Like, Hi, I'm from Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky. I like my sweet potato pie and my collard greens. I like my sweet potato pie, my collard greens. I'm from Kentucky, and I'm as American as apple pie. Okay, so obviously I'm one of the Canadians that I can't do a good American accent, but there are Canadians that can do really good American accents. So we gotta have, Canada's gotta have some Canadian mole in the White House that can leak the Epstein files for everyone. Welcome, Bo. Bo came in and said hi. Hi, Bo. Thank you for coming in the live stream. I mean, I can do other accents, but I can't do a good American accent, you know? And America has so many different accents. Like they have the Boston, like the New Yorker accent. They got like the Southern accent, like from Oklahoma, Kentucky, Texas, right? And then America even has like the Vermont, Rhode Island accent, like and California. I don't know, because California have accent. But anyways, I can't do a good American accent. I can do Indian though. Hello, welcome to the live stream. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Jeff Kurz. Thank you for coming in the live stream. Do you think that Mr. JD Vance should leak the Epstein files? Should he do it? What do you think? So no, I can't do American accents. I can do other accents. I could do British. Well, my British accent's not very good. I'm from Cheerio. I'm from Sussex, sort of. I just left my flat. I'm on my way to my job. I just left my bloody flat. Um, I was driving by Buckingham Palace. No, I can't do a British accent either. I guess I can't really do any accents, but I mean, Canada, we gotta have a mole in the White House. Like, Twitter's gotta be a Canadian spy working for the government of Canada, spying on Americans in the White House. Like, we gotta activate our Canadian mole. Like, I'm sure he or she or it, whatever, it. I'm sure the Canadian mole, he or she, can release the Epstein files, right? It's not that hard. They're probably locked away in the White House somewhere. You know, all our Canadian mole has to do is just go to those Epstein files, grab them, leak them, whoever the Canadian mole is. I'm sure we got someone. Like Canada, if Canada does not have a Canadian spy in the White House working for Canada, then Canada is incompetent. Like it's bad enough that we barely have an army or military, but like you would think that Canada, at least since like Canadians, we can look American, we can walk like an American, we can talk American. Like you would think Canada would have at least one Canadian spy in the White House who could like, you know, leak the Epstein files. I already know that like I wouldn't be good as a spy, and I know I wouldn't get the best jobs either. Like if I was working for CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, I just know I would be in the meeting and I'd be like, "Oh, can I go to Russia? Can I go to Germany? Can I go to France?" Right? Then they're like, "We're gonna send you to Detroit." I'm like, black people. No, they're like, would you rather go to Mexico with the Mexican cartel? I'm like, Detroit will be great. When can I start? Send me to Detroit. I love black people. I don't want to go to Mexico with the Mexican cartel. Yeah, I think I'll go to Detroit. Yes. Would you rather go to China or North Korea? No, Detroit looks pretty good. Send me to Det. Would you rather go to the Middle East where they like, they'll chop off your for being they don't put you know what they do to homosexuals in the Middle East, eh? You want to go to the Middle East? I'm like, no, no, actually Detroit is fine. Thank you. I love black people. You could send me to any ghetto anywhere you want in Detroit. Or actually, you can send me to Atlanta, where in the rich neighborhood in Atlanta. I'll go to Atlanta, I'll go to Detroit, I'll go to New Orleans, I'll go to New Orleans, I'll go to any of those places. But please don't send me to Mexico with the Mexican cartel. Please don't send me to the Middle East with like with all the Muslims and everything. Muslim extremists, they're all wearing burqas, right? They like looking for like immediately, like if they found out I was a homosexual in the Middle East, they would hang me right away. There would be no trial. There would be no negotiation to get me back to Canada. They just would like just. So yeah, I think Detroit sounds really good. If I'm gonna be a Canadian spy and I have to get stuck with Detroit or some other whatever place, I think yeah, I'll be good. Like, oh, would you rather go to to the Mid East of America, the Bible Belt, where they have like tornadoes and stuff, like Twister, end up in that one of those Twister movies? Be like, no, no, thank you. Yeah, actually, Detroit is looking really good right now compared to the Middle East, which has like overly religious people that will do something to me if they think I'm gay, or the Midwestern countries or Midwestern states, not countries, Midwestern states which have tornadoes and hurricanes and tornadoes. I don't want to go to Mexico with the Mexican cartel. Yeah, I think Detroit looks pretty good. Send me to Detroit. But no, they would never hire me to be a Canadian spy. I cannot keep a secret. I am not good at keeping secrets. Like one time, the Canadian government swore me to secrecy. I was working in human resources in the Canadian government, and we were working in this big medical research facility, right? Where they, experiment on people. You know how we have like COVID and Ebola and HPV and, mad cow disease, E. coli, and and now we have Ozempic, they're, whatever. So you know how we have all that stuff. So anyways, I was working in this top secret, high security level research facility in Canada in the middle of a forest because of course that's the perfect place to hide a top secret Canadian research facility where they experiment on innocent people. So I was working at one of those research facilities and the Canadian government, they like swore me to secrecy. And I'm like, don't worry, I can do this. I promise I will not tell anyone about. Oh crap. All right, well, anyways, I'm not good at keeping secrets. But for the record, actually, that was a joke. That was totally joking. I was joking. There is no top secret security, high security research facility in the middle of the forest, in the middle of a Canadian forest. There is no secret medical research facility where they experiment on innocent people in the middle of a Canadian forest. That was a joke. I was joking. It's not true. Or probably not true. Anyways. But no, I'm not good at keeping secrets for real. The government of Canada, they would never hire me. They wouldn't even hire me to like nothing. I mean, the government of Canada wouldn't hire me to do anything. Maybe to be a crash test dummy. I'll be like, you have real dummies over there. Why do you need a person? Like, this seems unsafe. I'm like in the back seat with like these other crash test dummies, and I'm like, so hey, do you make the same amount of money as I do? Hey, how come you get to wear seatbelts and I don't get to? This kind of seems unsafe. Why can't we just use the crash test dummies for the test drive? Why do we have to use a real human? They're like, shut up. Can I at least have a seatbelt on? No. Yeah, I don't know. The government of Canada wouldn't hire me for anything, probably. So I could never be a Canadian spy. But Canada, yeah, there's gotta be a Canadian mole in the White House. Like, I would actually be really offended if Canada didn't have someone working for Canada in the White House. Like, what have you been doing? Why do we pay such high taxes then? Where is our tax dollars going? If we don't have any decent Canadian spies working for Canada in the White House spying on Americans, then why are we paying such high taxes in Canada? Okay? With all of these government programs. Okay, Canada, we got to have our own version of the CIA, which is the Central Intelligence Agency. How could we not? How could Canada not? Like, we speak perfect English. Well, I mean, I don't speak perfect English, but you know what I mean. Most Canadians, we speak perfect English, eh? So we speak perfect English, and I mean, we can look like Americans, we can talk like Americans. We could totally get a job in the White House, just walking around. Secretly, we work for Canada, but we're doing like our best American accents, you know. I'm from America, eh? I'm from the Midwest, eh? I'm a I'm from New York. I'm a New Yorker from New. No. Well, I definitely couldn't be a Canadian spy because I can't do a good accent. I can't do a good American accent if it, if it was dependent on my life, dependent on it. But I'm good at running. I could run really fast. I'm really good. I did track and field. So if I ever had to run away from like those fat American cops, I could just imagine how fat those American cops are. They're always like stuffing their face with donuts, you know? I could totally I could totally run faster than those American cops for sure. I don't think I could outrun a speeding bullet, but I could definitely outrun those American cops, right? Let's just pray and hope that they don't have guns on them. I don't know. In Canada, our Canadian cops, they don't really have guns. I mean, they have guns, but sometimes I wonder if they're even real, to be honest. Is that a real gun? Is that a real Canadian gun? Like Canada, we really have the strictest gun control. Like Canada's gun control is so strict that I don't even think Canadian police officers have real guns. I think they might just be fake. You just see like these Canadian businesses get robbed in Canada, Canadian jewelry store get robbed. Like the Canadian police officers are just standing around eating donuts, drinking coffee. I'm like, yo, they're robbing, eh? They're like robbing Jim's jewelry store. Aren't you guys gonna do something? They're robbing Jim's jewelry store. They're like, yeah, we're totally gonna do something. Can we order another box of donuts? With the jelly this time? Don't skimp on the jelly donuts. He would be. Thank you, Ed Kane. So Ed Kane came in. Ed Kane said JD would be president next month if he got those files out there. He would be, exactly. I don't see how JD Vance could possibly win the 2028 election when he had every opportunity to leak those Epstein files and he didn't. So, But yeah, Canada. I mean, what have we been doing in Canada? Do we not? We must have spies around the world. Canadian spies. I mean, I do speak fluent Russian. I did study Russian for years, so I'm more of a Russia expert. I speak fluent Russian. I studied Russian for years, and I always watch those like TV shows where they have like Russian spies and stuff, like Russian spies. And I always noticed in many of the episodes of those TV shows where like it was a really dangerous Russian female femme fatale, really Russian, dangerous female Russian KGB officer, and she was so sexy that she just lured all the straight guys, like, and she lured all the straight American guys, and they all just like fell in her lap, like they just melted in her arms, right? Because she was just such a beautiful Russian woman. And like me, I'm a homosexual, so like she'd come on to me, I'd be like, doesn't work on me. Sorry, Russian suka, doesn't. Crap. Sorry, Russian honey, doesn't work on me. I'm a homosexual. She'd be like, what? Kill him. No. I'm like, joke's on you. I mean, I'm a homosexual. You can't lure me with your Russian sex appeal, your Russian charm, your femme fatale, your Russian KGB officer. She'd be like, start laughing. And then she tells her like handler to be like, get rid of him. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess the joke's on me. Please don't kill me. But no, I do speak fluent Russian. I read a lot of Russian novels. I don't have a degree in Russian, but I have a degree in something else. I can't say what it is, but I do have I do speak fluent Russian. I studied Russian for years, so I do speak fluent Russian. If anyone in here is Russian, because like Canada, right? Like Russia is really close. People don't realize how close Russia is to everyone. Russia is so big that literally like Russia touches all the other countries. Like that's how big Russia is. If you're ever planning to figure out which foreign language you want to learn, first off, I want to learn Spanish because I just know if I learn Spanish that they would send me like for a job, like an espionage job with the Mexican cartel. And you know the Mexican cartel, what they would do to me, right? The Mexican cartel wouldn't like, oh, and I wouldn't learn Arabic because if I learned Arabic, like imagine they sent me to the Middle East with all those like Muslim extremists and stuff. No, God, I wouldn't learn a homosexual learning Arabic. You might as well just sign. That's like that's a So I wouldn't learn Arabic. Mandarin Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. I don't know. I get this. I cannot learn Chinese. It's just so hard. Mandarin Chinese is just so hard Chinese. And also, the other reason is I have this feeling like when I'm learning Chinese, like if you just get one tone wrong, right? So you have to have like perfect tone in Chinese. It has to be like shi, shu, shu, right? So if you just say it just a little bit wrong, you will completely mess up the sentence. So if you say something like sh instead of shu, right? It'll totally mess up the sentence and no one will understand you. So I couldn't learn Chinese. And so I picked Russian because, if you just open the map of the world, it's like, hello, look how friggin' big Russia is. And Russia is so big it like touches all the other countries. That's how big Russia is. So Canada, actually, we don't technically touch Russia because Alaska, if it wasn't for Alaska, Alaska touches Russia. Like, well, just borders Russia, sort of. Almost touches Russia. Alaska almost touches Russia. But basically, yeah. So that's why I learned Russian because I'm like, well, I think Russian might be useful since Russia's the biggest country in the world. And so I studied Russian for years and I speak fluent Russian. But the Russians, I wasn't really concerned too much with the whole I'm a homosexual thing that the Russians might kill me for being gay. But I'll never go to Russia. Russian people, Russian people are really nice, actually. They are really nice, but I'll never go to Russia. No, I wouldn't go to Russia for other reasons, actually. I don't think the Russians would have a problem with me so much being a homosexual. The Russians would have a problem with me just because I'm just really irritating when I make jokes and stuff. So I was one time I was with this Russian woman and I was making jokes and she didn't understand because she was Russian, so she didn't get the jokes. I'm like, I just like that was from The Simpsons. I'm like, don't you have The Simpsons in Russia? Right? So basically, long story short, she bashed me over the head with something and she, anyways. So no, I'm kind of irritating and I make too many jokes. That's why the Russians wouldn't like me. But so basically, no, I would never go to Russia. But I do speak fluent Russian. I do have many online Russian friends, and I do talk to them. They constantly tell me about what it's like in Mother Russia to live in Mother Russia. They're all like afraid of their lives. Like they're afraid that if they say something or do something, right? So, but they all put on a happy face. They all smile. They're all happy. They're really nice. But see, that's why they're so well behaved. It's because they're afraid, right? So it's like the Russians are extremely nice and well behaved because they are literally afraid that if they like say something wrong, that they'll be axed, right? So actually, that's not a good thing about Russia. It's not a good thing to be that you're so well behaved because if you have to be, or else you're afraid that something will happen. I guess it's not really a good thing, but I mean, at least it's a silver lining that they're well behaved people. Like, they're not troublemakers, they're not vandal. Imagine doing vandalism in Russia. Imagine going to Russia and vandalizing things. Like, they'd put you in prison forever. But then what is the result of that? No vandalism, which is great. Russia has like zero, next is not no vandalism. Okay, Russia is like clean, nice. People are expected to be nice, professional, like almost no vandalism. I'm sure someone's gonna pull up an article from like 20 years ago where someone did vandalism and got like 50 years in prison. But what I'm saying is like almost practically 0% vandalism, low crime rate, low vandalism. The people are professionals. I mean, that's a pretty good benefit of having a communist dictator regime, right? When you say, okay, I guess that's not really. I guess people will be like, "Oh my God, if I clap too loud, do not clap too loud. If you clap too loud, you know what happens to people who clap too loud, right?" Okay, so I guess it's not. You shouldn't be that afraid that if you accidentally spill the milk, like you're like a waitress in a Russian cafe and you accidentally spill the milk and you're like, oh no, oh no, gulag, I have to go back to the Russian gulag. I just spilled the milk again. Accident. You just see them shaking. The Russian servers are shaking. They're so scared. So. But yeah, so Russia, I wouldn't go to Russia. I wouldn't go to the Middle East. I wouldn't go to America again because the only people who actually kicked my ass were Americans. Funny story. So I was in America and I was like, hey, they say all the time that Canada and the United States were allies, right? So if we're allies, then we should have no problem sharing information, right? We're allies, yo. So I'm in Detroit. I'm like, yo, what's up, my sister? I'm from Canada, yo. So I got my ass beat in Detroit. And then I left Detroit and I went to Washington. And I'm like, Washington, they must be really accepting of a Canadian. I mean, they had many different presidents in the White House, if you know what I mean. So they must be really accepting and welcoming for a Canadian. So I'm in the White House, walking around in the White House, like, I'm a Canadian. I'm allowed to be here. Canada and the United States, we're allies. We are allies, right? You're not going to hurt and beat up your allies, are you? So I'm Canadian, walking around in the White House. I see the Oval Office. I'm like, wow, I'm not going to touch anything. It's really gross. Bill Clinton spent 8 years in this thing. Just knowing what Bill Clinton did it on, did it under, did what he touched. Like I wouldn't even touch the cactus. I wouldn't even touch the White House cactus because knowing Bill Clinton was in the White House for 8 years. Oh, so I'm like, now I'm not gonna touch anything in the Oval Office because I know Bill Clinton was there for 8 years. But I'm walking around the rest of the White House and I'm like, yeah, hey, what's that room? and it says top secret. Well, top secret, only admitted personnel only. Well, I'm a Canadian, and Canada and America were allies, right? So, like, obviously, we have to share information with your allies. So, top secret. So, anyways, this story is fake. I never went to the White House, obviously. It's a joke. It's a joke. But I mean, Canada, come on. We gotta have some spies in the White House. There's got to be a Canadian spy that can leak those Epstein files. We got to get those Epstein files leaked. Okay, we got to find out who these rich elite pervs are. We got to find out who these weirdos are, these rich elite pervs, because I don't want them in my neighborhood. Okay, I live in like a $20 million home, and no, I'm just joking. I don't. I live in kind of like, anyways, no, I'm not gonna tell people where I live. Anyways, I live in Canada. Let's just put it that. I live in Canada. And I don't want some like rich perv coming to my neighborhood, right? So we gotta know who's on this Epstein list. We gotta know. I think it's suspicious, a bit suspicious that Ellen DeGeneres, like as soon as around the time Trump was announcing that Trump was gonna release the Epstein list, suddenly Ellen DeGeneres picked up and left the United States right away, and she went to England. She went to Britain. What does that say about British people? Hey, Ellen DeGeneres, around the time that Donald Trump said he's going to release the Epstein list, suddenly you pick up and move to Britain. Well, interesting and more than enough. So that why you'd be like, oh, well, Ellen DeGeneres is a rich celebrity. She can just pick up and move wherever she wants. Wait a minute. But not when I add this to the story, which is true about Ellen DeGeneres. So Ellen DeGeneres did an interview with Oprah Winfrey. Ellen DeGeneres was on the Oprah Winfrey show, where Ellen DeGeneres actually told Oprah Winfrey, this is a real this is a real television clip that you can look up on YouTube. You can look this up on YouTube. This is real. This was a real episode of Oprah Winfrey. So this was not on Ellen's show. This was when Ellen was a guest on the Oprah Winfrey show. So this was an Oprah Winfrey clip. So you have to look up the Oprah Winfrey episodes. So Ellen DeGeneres told Oprah Winfrey that her own family accused her of being a pedo. Ellen DeGeneres' own family accused Ellen DeGeneres of being a pedo. They wouldn't even let Ellen go around like the nieces and stuff. I'm not, this is for real. This is real, where's real. I watched this. This is how I know about this. Because this was an episode of Oprah Winfrey. And I don't watch the Oprah Winfrey show. This was a clip that I saw, right? About Ellen DeGeneres. So Ellen DeGeneres went on the Oprah Winfrey show and told Oprah Winfrey that her own family, Ellen DeGeneres' own family, accused Ellen of being a pedo. And now, just a few months ago, Ellen DeGeneres, Trump is saying about possibly leaking the Epstein files. Next thing you know, Ellen DeGeneres picks up, sells everything, moves, leaves the United States, goes to Britain for safety. Why? What does that say about British people? Are the British people going to protect a pedo, right? So when you put all that information together, and then not only this, Ellen DeGeneres was so two-faced because all of the producers from her show, Ellen DeGeneres for 10 years, she's like, you have to accept me for being a lesbian. I am a lesbian and you have to accept me and you have to laugh at my horrible jokes. If you don't laugh at my horrible jokes, you're homophobic. So anyways, Ellen DeGeneres, that's not wait, I can't do a good Ellen DeGeneres impression, but anyways, Ellen DeGeneres for 10 years, like whatever, her show went on for 10 to 15 years, whatever. She was like, oh, forcing people or say, oh, I'm so kind, I'm such a nice lesbian, right? Well, it turns out that Ellen DeGeneres is actually not a really nice lesbian. She was one of the meanest people on television, behind the scenes. Like, obviously, but actually, they even have clips of Ellen DeGeneres where she's not really nice in front of the camera either. But they also, especially behind the scenes, all of these actors and celebrities, all of the producers of the Ellen DeGeneres show, they all come forward and say that Ellen DeGeneres is a total bit. Like, she was a bit. Like, you know what I mean? So when you add everything together, when you add the fact that Ellen DeGeneres admitted to Oprah Winfrey that her own family accused her of being a pedo, then Ellen DeGeneres, when she heard that Trump was going to release the Epstein list, suddenly around the same time she picks up, sells everything, moves to Britain. moves to England with all the British people, right? And then also Ellen DeGeneres was two-faced for many years because she claimed to be such a nice, caring, kind person on television, but then everyone came forward, the producers of the Ellen DeGeneres show, all of these people came forward and said Ellen is not nice. She is a real bitch. So something is going on there with Ellen DeGeneres. I strongly suspect that Ellen DeGeneres could be on the Epstein list for real and the Diddy list, well, all the lists, right? How do you go from having a whole list to then having one scapegoat, which is Jeffrey Epstein? How do you go from having a whole Diddy list to then one scapegoat, which is P. Diddy? These were the blackmailers, by the way. Like P. Diddy was blackmailing the really bad ones. Like P. Diddy was actually getting real dirt and evidence on like the most worst ones, like the worst rich elites. P. Diddy was the blackmailer. So they put the blackmailer in prison. P. Diddy he was definitely not innocent either, but P. Diddy was collecting videos of like the most worst rich elites, and he was blackmailing the richest of the rich elites. So the Donald Trump, actually, P. Diddy could have been blackmailing Donald Trump, actually, to be honest. P. Diddy, because then Trump, what did he do? He sends the federal police not to the rest of the Epstein list. They have a whole Epstein list. How come the only person on the Epstein list that gets arrested is P. Diddy? No, sorry. The only person on the Diddy list, the only person on the whole Diddy list that gets arrested is P. Diddy. The only one. P. Diddy, there's a whole Diddy list, and the only one who gets arrested is P. Diddy, the one who was actually blackmailing all of the really bad ones. And then the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. There was a whole Epstein list, and the only one on the Epstein list that gets arrested is the Epstein himself, who was like the blackmailer. So, so explain that one to me, you know? And it's all confusing. They have a Diddy list, they have an Epstein list, they have Schindler's List. What was Schindler's List? I didn't even know. See, Schindler's List was before my time, right? Because I was really young when when the movie, it was a movie called Schindler's List, but it was based on something, right? It was based on World War II, Schindler's List. So they got Schindler's List. I don't know what Schindler's List anyways, but they got Schindler's List. They got the Epstein list. They got the Diddy list. They got the blacklist. The blacklist, which, believe it or not everyone on the blacklist is black. I thought when I was growing up, and you're going to call me a stupid Canadian, I don't care, but I thought, oh, the blacklist means everyone on it's black, right? No, they have lots of white people on the blacklist, including myself. Blacklist, get it? Because, okay, anyways. No, seriously, like, I cannot get a job. What? Anyways. I could not get a good job. I have a job, but I cannot get a good job is what I'm saying. I work at a bookstore and I have a job. I have a part-time job. I have many part-time jobs. I worked at Walmart. I worked at Lowe's. I work currently at a bookstore. I worked at Chapters. I worked at Starbucks. I got fired from Starbucks, but I worked at Starbucks. People come into Starbucks be like, can I have a triple double tall, low fat, non-fat, super fat latte with extra cream, but low fat extra cream with sprinkled cinnamons and a cup that is boiled exactly to, I'm like, honey, you lost me at hello. I stopped listening at hello, honey. Sorry. So I got fired from Starbucks. But yeah, no, obviously, I can't get a good job. Obviously, I can't get a job working at like for the Central Intelligence Agency. That's what I meant. Like, I have a job, I have a part-time job, but I applied many for years. I applied to CSIS. I applied to the CIA. I applied to even the Russian FSB. Can you believe it? I applied to the Kremlin and the Kremlin denies me. Can you believe it? What a bunch of assholes. Okay, I was like calling the Kremlin saying, I'll do anything for Putin. I'm obsessed with Putin. I love Putin. He's a real man, whatever. And then the next thing you know, the Kremlin denies me. Okay, what a bunch of a-holes, right? I was willing to sell out Canada for the. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. It's a joke. But anyways, so anyways, I applied to the CIA. I applied to CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I applied to the FSB, the Federalная служба безопасности, the Federal Security Service of Russia, the Kremlin. I applied to all these places. I even applied to the stinky French. I even applied to the French one. The DGSE, the Director General Sécurité, whatever. Equipe. I even applied to the French intelligence service. I applied to the German intelligence service. I applied to the French intelligence service. I applied to the American one. And so, of course, I could never get a good job, right? They always give all the good jobs to the straight people. All the straight people, all the straight guys, the straight women, they all get the good jobs, right? I have to go back to doing my straight voice when I was pretending to be straight for all those years. I did. I got better jobs. That's how actually I got the government of Canada job. I pretended to be straight. I did. I was pretending to be straight, but it's hard. It's hard to pretend to be straight. You have to like say virtually nothing. Hello, how are you today? Good. How's the weather? Good. That's my straight voice. That's what what do you think about Sarah, the new office hire in the office? How do you think she's a good worker? Good. Okay, so anyways, I can't do, but I used to be able to do it really good. I used to pretend to be straight, and I worked for the government of Canada, but not as a spy. I wasn't working as a spy for the government of Canada, no. I mean, to work as a spy, you probably got to be like James Bond, 007. You got to be able to sleep with a lot of women. I can't even sleep with one woman, let alone a bunch of women at the same time, okay? So anyways, we need a new James Bond movie, by the way, because anyways, we need another James Bond movie. So I never worked as a Canadian spy. But basically, yeah, they give all the best jobs to straight people. They give the jobs to straight men and straight women. And yeah, so basically, Canada sucks because Canada is just as homophobic as Russia. Like I went into those stupid, well, they're not. Anyways, well, they are stupid. Anyways, okay, they're not stupid in the sense. Okay, I went into one of those centers. I can't call them a stupid center because then people are gonna. I'm a real homosexual, right? I'm a real homosexual, but I can't. Anyways, okay. So I went into one of those centers for help. I went into one of those LGBTQ centers because I'm like, well, I'm a real homosexual, so maybe I can actually get a benefit from this place. I went in there, and they were a bunch of weirdos, and they all were like, they weren't really lesbian, gay, like they were just transgender. There was no lesbians in there, right? Because I run from lesbians. Trust me. When I see lesbians, I run. Lesbians, real lesbians that don't like men, I run. I went in there. There was no lesbians. There was no gays. There was no gay men. Because I know gay men. I know real gay men, right? There was no gay men. There was just transgenders in the LGBTQ center. And I'm like, this must be like a transgender one, right? I went to another LGBTQ center, and it was, again, just transgenders. There was no gays. There was no lesbians. There was no bisexuals. And bisexuals, like, bisexuals are sneaky, right? Because bisexuals can be pretending, anyway. So there's no bisexuals, there's no gays, there's no lesbians. I went to a third one, I swear to God. I went to a third LGBTQ center, again, all transvestites, transgenders. I'm like, okay, sorry, but I am not transgender, and I do not like anyone, any guy who would actually cut his own thing off is like crazy in my opinion. So, anyways, I was like, okay, so I went in, I'm like, hi, I'm a homosexual, and I've been struggling for years. I couldn't get a job. Now I have a job, but like obviously this was several years. This was 10 years ago. Like this was a long time ago. So this was 10 years ago. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't find a job. Went into these LGBTQ centers. I'm like, hi, I'm a real homosexual. Well, I didn't say I'm a real homosexual. You know what I mean? I went in, I'm like, hi, I'm a homosexual. can I get a job? Like, can I get a job? Can you help me find a job? You know, whatever. They were like these really weirdo, like transvestite people who like were really mean to me. They were mean to me. And I was like, they're like, do you dress up? Like, no. Like, oh, you mean like a suit? Yeah, I love James Bond 007. I've always wanted to like be like James Bond 007, so I have a really cool tuxedo. They're like, no. Do you like dress up like a woman? I'm like, no, I'm a homosexual. Women are stupid. I don't like women. Then they looked at me like, and I'm like, but that's just me. I'm a homosexual. Like I'm a gay man. We don't like women. We don't like to talk like women. We don't like to walk like women. We don't like to talk to women. We don't like women. That's literally the definition of a homosexual is men who like men. I don't like to be in the company of women. That's literally the definition of homosexual. And they looked at me like, you don't want to dress up like a woman? Really? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to dress up like a woman. No, that's weird. That's creepy. That's kind of weird and creepy. Then they're like, which bathroom do you use? I'm like, obviously the men's bathroom. I'm a real homosexual. I obviously a real homosexual uses the men's bathroom with men. I don't go into anything women's. Okay. Then they're like, what's wrong with using the women's bathroom? I'm like, dude, you're a dude. That's what's wrong with using the women's bathroom, you weirdo. Anyways, I can't say. Anyways, I have to be careful what you say on YouTube. But basically, they were discriminating against me because I'm a real homosexual and I have every right. If I want to dress up like James Bond 007, if I want to wear suits and tuxedos like a real man, if I want to dress up in a construction outfit, if I want to, go to the White House and snoop around. Okay, I guess I can't do that. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a real homosexual and these transvestite people were discriminating against me. Because, like, I'm a homosexual, and of course I'm going to use the men's bathroom. Of course I'm going to use the men's change room. Okay? Hello? It literally says it in the definition of homosexual. Men who like men. So I'm not going to use the girls' bathroom. I'm not going to use the girls' change room. I'm not going to use anything. Like, why would transvestites want to use the women's bathroom? It never made sense to me for a long time. Like, you people are weird. Why do you want to use the women's bathroom? It's very simple. It says it on the door, okay? Do you not know how to read a sign? Men's bathroom, women's bathroom. If you are a man, you use this bathroom. If you were a woman, and these are not women. These are men who dress up like women. So why do men who dress up like women, are they not smart enough to realize that even though they're men that dress up like women, they're still men and they still have to use the men's bathroom? Unless if they want to argue and say that they had the surgery, because if they remove the pecker, then they're no longer really a threat, right? If they remove the whole reason that women don't want men in the women's change room or the women's bathroom is because men have the pecker. So if a man really wants to be a woman removes his pecker, then how could he be a threat to women in the women's change room? Okay. So I was watching an episode one time of Judge Judy. I was watching an episode of Judge Judy, and there was a Filipino transvestite. There was a Filipino transvestite on an episode of Judge Judy. He, whatever it was using the women's change room. A woman went in the change room at the gym, saw the guy's pecker, and ran out screaming. First off, hello Filipinos. I know you're not stupid. You not realize even if you're a transvestite, even if you dress up like a woman, even if you wear women's makeup, whatever, if you walk around with your pecker out in a women's change room, they're gonna run out screaming. You realize that, right? So this was an episode of Judge Judy. You could look this up. This was an episode of Judge Judy. There was a Filipino transvestite who was using a gym and went in the women's change room and his pecker was out and a woman saw it and ran out screaming. Why is a transvestite Filipino using the women's bathroom and then using the women's change room, and on top of it, doesn't have the common sense to realize that if she sees his pecker, she's gonna get scared and run out of the change room. So these transvestites, I don't know who they are. I'm not a transvestite, but you cannot use the women's bathroom if you are a man. Even if you are a man that dresses up like a woman, you cannot use the women's bathroom. You cannot use the women's change room. It's very simple. It says it on the door. It says men and women. Can you not read a sign? If you cannot read a sign, then you need to go back to school. Anyways. Let's go to the comments. Bob, Jim, Joe, Jackson. Bob, actually, I kind of like Nathan's comment too. Okay, let's go with Nathan was technically first, so let's go with Nathan. He said, "You're gay, dude. Russia isn't going to give you a job." I know. Let's go back to that. So I just pinned Nathan's comment. I just pinned Nathan's comment. You are right. Russia is not going to give me a job because I'm homosexual. You are totally right about that. But I learned Russian for many years because I did actually see a documentary when I was growing up, and it said that Russians were like one of the biggest gay bashers, right? So honestly, I don't like walk around promoting it. I really don't. In fact, I wear black. I dress like a man. I was just talking about how I like to wear tuxedos and I like to dress up like James Bond 007, right? I dress like a man. I wear black. I wear tuxedos. I dress up like James Bond 007. So obviously, I don't go walking around being like dressing up like in girly colors and wearing rainbow flags. I don't do any of that. So I'm like, well, hey, Russia, the reason that they're pissed off is because they just don't want men going around promoting it. They don't want men promoting wearing those stupid rainbow flags. And I agree with Russia. I agree with Putin. I agree with Russia. That's creepy and weird. Why are they walking around down the street with their things out? Like, I like a man that's dressed up like a man. I want to see a man in a suit and a tie like James Bond 007. I want to see a construction worker. I want to see a lawyer. I want to see, well, I don't like lawyers because they're scumbags. Lawyers are scumbags. I want to see mechanics. Well, I don't like mechanics because mechanics are even bigger scumbags. But you know what I mean? You get my point is I want to see a real professional man with a real job dressed up in a suit and a tie, right? I don't want to see a weirdo running down the street throwing dildos around in glitter, okay? So I figured that the Russians would accept me because I'm a traditional homosexual that believes in, clothing and believes in responsibility and honor. And then I watched a documentary which highlighted one case specifically. The guy wore a suit, he wore a tie, and he was a scientist. And I'm like, oh no, I'm a scientist. You better not F with a scientist, Russia. You Russians better not F with a scientist because I'm a scientist. And that's really what I identify as a scientist. I'm a scientist, mathematician. I can do calculus in my head. I was an expert mathematician. I loved math. I still do math for fun. I'm a mathematician. I'm a scientist at heart. So Russia, you better not F with a scientist. So this guy was a scientist. Kind of like Alan Turing, who was another famous gay mathematician scientist, code breaker, cryptographer. So I'm watching this documentary, and this guy's a scientist, a Russian scientist who happens to be a homosexual, extremely closeted. Like he was extremely closeted. So the FSB, apparently, no, it was the KGB back then. Back then it was the KGB. The KGB secretly found out that this guy was very closeted. He was a homosexual. And they actually, at first, they had a guy who pretended to be gay and came on to him and invited him out for drinks, seduced him, whatever. And this guy was actually KGB. And this KGB officer murdered this gay scientist. And this gay scientist, like he had a job, he wore a suit and tie, he was an upstanding member of the community. He did nothing wrong. He went to work every day. He was a scientist. He was a brilliant scientist. And the KGB was so homophobic that despite that this guy was a brilliant scientist, he had a job, he wore a suit and tie, he never promoted homosexuality. In fact, he was the most closeted and he would deny it if anyone asked him. He pretended to have a girlfriend. The KGB had someone pretend to be gay, seduce this scientist, and then the KGB murdered him. And I was like, oh, you do not murder a scientist. Like, I've had enough of we scientists. We've had enough of being murdered by the Catholic Church, by all of these churches, all of these religious churches. They love to murder scientists. All of these crazy religious people love to murder scientists. Remember when Galileo, what happened to Galileo and all? Anyways, Nikola Tesla. Anyways, so I'm like, no, Russia, you don't murder scientists. So that actually, with this story, is what inspired me to learn Russian. Obviously for defense, because I know the Russians aren't going to hire me. But basically, I'm going to learn Russian because maybe I'll work for the FBI. Maybe I'll work for, what really irritated me too was the fact that this guy, this gay Russian, wasn't like some weirdo who goes around throwing dildos and glitter at everyone at parades. This guy was a normal guy. Like he had a job. He wore a suit, he had a briefcase, he wore a suit and a tie. He was a scientist, like a Russian gay scientist. That it offended me that they went after someone who was just a normal person, who wasn't some weirdo. Anyways. And then the other issue too with Mother Russia. Oh, hold on a sec. We'll be right back. So the other issue too with Mother Russia is in Russia, um they have a lot of diversity, believe it or not. Russia does have diversity. So but Russia used to hate China. A lot of people don't realize this. But the history of Russia and China, they used to be mortal enemies. Russia and China had a war. Like Russia and China used to hate each other's guts. There was like the Russians were, they had a border. Like the Russians had a real border with China where they enforced the border. And, so it was literally like the ninjas from China. Like everybody was kung fu fighting. Like that was like what it was like between Russia and China for years. Then Russia and China united against the West. So what happened was originally, many years ago, Russia and China hated each other because the Russians, they looked at the Chinese and they were like, they didn't trust the Chinese didn't trust the Russians, they hated each other for years. And then what happened was the West became so irritating. Western people like me became so irritating that China, who was mortal enemies of Russia, decided to scrap all their beef with each other, and Russia and China became super allies. So when I discovered that, I'm like, really? Russia and China used to be mortal enemies? It's true. So, hey, Western people are so irritating that they took two mortal enemies and made them friends, and made Russia and China friends with each other. So, I mean, I don't know really how that deep that friendship is because China, like, they're packed to the rim with people. So, hey, Russia, can you make some room for more Chinese people? Like, you're supposed to be allies with China, right? Hey, Russia, you're supposed to be good allies with China. Russia, you're like the biggest country in the world. You got lots of space. Can you make some room for some more Chinese immigrants to come? Because China's packed. Like, China is packed to the rim. There's like China. Like you go to some Chinese streets and you just walk outside and you're already like everyone's around you. Like, you can't get a spot on the subway. Everyone's like crammed in on the subway and the Chinese subway. So hey Russia, if you are really good allies with China, why don't you like let more Chinese immigrants into Russia? I don't see why not. They're your allies, you trust them. You know, you're united against the West. But all these people, they always say, "Oh, we're gonna go to war with China. Oh, China, China, China this, China that." Hello. That sounded gay. Sorry. Hello. Uh, did we all forget about Japan for a sec? Let's talk about Japan for a second. Japan, the most deadly country of warriors for centuries. Japan. Tulsi Gabbard was in the director of national intelligence meeting. Remember Tulsi Gabbard? She was being promoted to the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. And then I was like in shock. I was in shock because Tulsi Gabbard, first off, not that Tulsi Gabbard's a woman and she's the director of national intelligence. Obviously, I wasn't shocked that they made a woman the director of national intelligence. Anyways, I was shocked that Tulsi Gabbard actually called out Japan. Is this World War II? Did Pearl Harbor just happen? Are you serious, Tulsi Gabbard? Japan has been America's ally now for like 60, 70 years. Of course, you know, obviously they weren't allies with America in World War II, but since World War II, Japan has been a trustworthy ally of the United States for like 50, 60 years. Suddenly, this was just a few months ago. It was maybe about 6, 7 months ago, maybe a year. It was within the last year, so it was about 7, 8 months ago, whatever. Tulsi Gabbard, when she was being had her DNI hearing, her Director of National Intelligence hearing, she was in on stage and she actually said that she was concerned and worried about the Japanese building up their infrastructure, as if America shouldn't trust the Japanese, as if Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, shouldn't trust the Japanese. So I have two questions to respond to that. One, is she just trying to stir up beef with Japan? Is she just trying to stir up beef with Japan? Or is Japan really a threat again? Has Japan really become a threat? America's one of America's allies, which I mean Japan has been a strong ally of the United States for years now. I'm constantly seeing news articles with the Americans. They're always doing training exercises with the Japanese. So I figured the Japanese and Americans, they're tight now. You know, they're tight. The Japanese and Americans, they're tight. But then Tulsi Gabbard gets on stage and she says she's worried about Japan building up their infrastructure, which is like totally insulting to the Japanese. The Japanese, sure, sure, of course, in World War II, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Obviously, in World War II, the Japanese were not allies of America. But for the last 60 years, the Japanese have been nothing but strong allies to the Americans. So why is suddenly Tulsi Gabbard just 7, 8 months ago saying in public, and this is not something that she said behind closed doors. Because I'm sure the Americans, they're constantly saying stuff behind closed doors. Oh, yeah, we don't trust the Japanese. Oh, they want to drop a nuke on China. Oh, they don't like those sneaky backstabbing Canadians. I'm sure the Americans are constantly saying stuff behind closed doors. But she actually said it. She embarrassed Japan in front of the world stage. Like the whole world saw this. She knew this was being recorded. She knew the whole world was going to see this. She literally says that she doesn't trust, like she insinuated that she doesn't trust Japan. She doesn't trust Japan, which has been America's ally for 50, 60 years. And she doesn't trust Japan? Isn't that offensive to Japan? Japan, which has worked so hard to gain America's trust, which has been a trustworthy ally of the United States for 50, 60 years. And Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence, says, oh, she's concerned and worried about Japan building up their infrastructure. If I were Japanese, I'd be like, what? Sayonara. What did you just say? How dare you? What did Japan do? I want Tulsi Gabbard to tell us what Japan did specifically that made her worried that Japan is going to become a threat again to the United States. And I'm also worried too, because if you studied World War II, like the Japanese, they were fierce. The Japanese, like they were people you did not want to mess with. Okay, that's another country that I wouldn't go to as a homosexual. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. If I went to World War II Japan, no, they would just chop my head off because they thought it was irritating, probably, which was anyways. What? Oh my God. Okay, so CRXR came in. CRXR. He makes really good comments. Okay, I'm gonna pin his comment. This is interesting. I didn't know this. Oh my God. So CRXR came in and CRXR, he said, maybe it could be that Japan just named their warship the same name as the one that attacked or something in World War II, Pearl Harbor. Really? Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty scary. Yeah, but Dan, okay, so Dan came in. Let's do Dan's comment. Dan came in and he said, Japan's constitution says they cannot have a military with offensive capability. They are now making military with offensive capability, and it is a concern to people seeing them violate their own laws. Okay, but I mean, if you were Japan and you were like next to China, and China who got like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like imagine sending one of your allies into war with like a stick. It's like imagine taking me a Canadian, right? And like imagine I was working for the CIA. Let's say that the CIA hired a Canadian asset to work for the CIA. I'm a Canadian, and the CIA is like, we're gonna send you to Russia, but don't worry, you got defense. We're gonna send you to Russia, and you're gonna have like this little lighter. Wait, not just the lighter, like so America, hello, Japan is right next to China. China. Like the you know Taiwan? You remember Taiwan, the little island that's under China that's afraid that China's gonna swoop in and take Taiwan? The Japanese must be pissing themselves constantly next to China. Of course Japan needs to have offensive weapons. Japan needs to have some of the strongest weapons. If they're really going to defend themselves against China, Japan needs to be stocked full of weapons. So, Dan came in and he said, oh, well, the reason that they don't trust the Japanese is because they went from making defensive weapons to now offensive weapons. Well, geez, of course they should. I mean, Jesus, when they're next to China, I mean, if I were next to China too, I would want to have like friggin', I want to be like, so no, that's how I will respond to that comment, which I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just saying like you got to look at the eyes of the Japanese people. Like they're literally next to China. They're right beside China. I would be scared too. I would want better weapons being next to China. So you're going to say, oh, well, we can't really trust the Japanese because now they said they were going to do defensive weapons and now they're doing offensive weapons and not just the, well, hello. Like, yeah, if I live next to China too, I would be scared too. I would want offensive weapons. I would want every weapon you could think of if I lived next to China. And especially Taiwan. America should arm Taiwan too. Taiwan and Japan should be armed to the tooth being next to China. So Americans, like you have to arm your allies. If you really want these people to be your allies, like if China steamrolls over Japan, Japan's done. Like Japan will can't be your ally no more, America, if China just steamroll over you. It's the same concept as how America was funding Ukraine. America was giving all of those defensive weapons to Ukraine. It's the same thing. You can't, if Ukraine had no weapons, Russia would have just won in and swooped over Ukraine already. So, I mean, you have to let your allies have weapons. I like Japan having offensive weapons doesn't seem like a big deal to me. It doesn't mean we can't trust the Japanese. Let's go to Jamie. Jamie came in and he said, imagine having TDS this hard. Congrats, you're making money from these idiots that still follow this shit. Stay programmed. It's easier for you to get it. I'm not monetized, bro. So anyone who's listening to me right now, I'm not making money off this. I'm not monetized. My account is not monetized. So nice try. I wish. I wish I was monetized. I applied for monetization because my account suddenly, my account, people who started, I got popular suddenly the last 2 months. I had this account for a year. The last 3 months, I got a lot more popular. I got a lot more subscribers. So I guess naturally, it's automatic that whenever someone gets so many views, so many subscribers, they get offered to apply for monetization. So I got an email saying you can now apply for monetization on YouTube. I applied and they denied me. YouTube denied me monetization, those efforts. So, you know, so no, I'm actually not monetized. I wish. It's actually apparently pretty hard to get monetized on YouTube. So, nice try though. I'm not being paid to say this. No one's paying me. I'm not making money off of YouTube, so then the other issue that obviously we have is Ukraine and Russia, which, you know, what doesn't make sense to me about that whole thing is if there was really a big war with Russia right now, then why couldn't we just flank Russia? Like we got Japan on one side, we got Alaska, we got so Russia, as much as Russia is touching every country is touching Russia. Right? Like if you look at the map of the world, Russia, Mother Russia is so big that they are touching literally like borders all these countries. Russia borders Finland. Or does Russia border Finland? Anyways, Russia borders Latvia. Russia borders all of these countries, right? So, as much as Russia is touching all these countries are also touching Russia. So why is it just Ukraine? Why can't we get Poland? Poland hates Russia. The Polish people, they hate the Russians. Why can't we get the Poland? Why can't we get Poland in on this? If we flanked Russia, if Russia was flanked from all the sides, like, you know, if Russia was flanked and we had Poland and Japan and then Alaska and then Ukraine and then Latvia. I don't know about the Latvians. I don't know if they're on our side, but anyways, we could just easily flank the Russians. I don't so someone actually I wasn't the one who thought of this. I was talking to a German because the Germans, you know, from World War II, the Germans are always up to something, right? So I was talking So I was talking to the Germans, right? I was trying to get their opinion on this. I'm like, what do you think about this whole Ukraine, Russia, this, all that? And the Germans, there's a German guy, and he was telling me if this is a real war, then why wouldn't Russia being flanked right now with Japan? Like, this could be over. Like, Japan, Poland, Ukraine, all the Alaska, all of these countries, well, you know, all Alaska would be America. Alaska, Japan, all of these countries that border Russia, all of these pro-American Western countries that border Russia, they could easily take Russia out if we just flanked Russia, right? Because how could Russia fight on the Ukrainian border and then also defend against Japan and also defend against Poland and then also defend against whatever the Latvians are, if the Latvians are on our side? You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, we got Alaska. Like, this could be so easy and so over. So this doesn't make sense. Something with this whole war doesn't make sense. It's really weird. I'm telling you something. I don't trust the Russians, honestly, and I don't trust the Ukrainians either. So every time that we have to send all this money to Ukraine, I'm like, I feel like the Russians are just laughing. I feel like the Russians and Ukrainians, like they're just playing a big joke on the West. The Russians and Ukrainians, they're playing a big joke on the rest. The West, they're pretending to be fighting so that Ukraine gets all this money, and then the Russians and Ukrainians are all drinking champagne, laughing at the Westerners. I think it's a big joke. All I know is Russia, stay out of my pocket, stay out of my pants. I'm poor as it is, Russia. I cannot afford to send more tax dollars to Ukraine, okay? Ukraine, Russia, whatever they are, they seem both Russian to me. I can't tell if you put a Ukrainian and a Russian in front of me, I couldn't tell the difference, honestly. In fact, if you put a Japanese and a Chinese, I'm not gonna finish that sentence. Anyways, you get my point, okay? If if you put someone from Mexico and someone from Spain in front of me, I couldn't tell the difference, okay? I can't tell the difference. If you put a Canadian and an American in front of me, I could tell the difference between an American and a Canadian. Okay, because Canadians, we're nice usually. Americans are just a-holes. No, but no, seriously. So I can't tell the difference between Russians and Ukrainians. I didn't even know that they were different countries, honestly. I didn't even know Ukraine was a country until this whole war started. So I don't see why we have to send them all our money, all our tax dollars. Canada, we're not going to have any money left to defend ourselves. Okay, the Russians, they're going to get all this money. Ukrainians going to get all this money. Then when it comes time for Canada to fight a war, we're not going to have any money for ourselves to defend the war. So Canada's like 10 times bigger than Ukraine. Canada's the second biggest country in the world. We gotta defend Canada. Okay, we can't be worried about all these other smaller countries. If Russia wants to eat the little smaller countries, sorry, but Canada, we gotta worry about our own pockets. I'm poor. My whole family is poor. My friends are poor. Okay, our politicians are poor. Everyone in Canada is poor. Okay, so we can't afford to send no more of our tax dollars to Ukraine or to Russia. Yeah, Canada, we do got resources apparently. So I was well, it's not really spying if it's Canadians because I'm Canadian. So it's not like I'm spying on other Canadians. But anyways, I was listening to other Canadians and they were saying apparently the northern part of Canada has these like rich resources, minerals, resources which are not being protected. Apparently, the northern part of Canada has these like resources. I'm not an expert on mining. I'm not an expert on resources and minerals, but apparently, I was listening to other Canadians, and they were saying that the northern part of Canada has these minerals, rich minerals, or really valuable minerals and resources that are not being protected. And if they're worried that the Russians or someone could just swoop in and just take them, right? So Canada, we gotta build up our own infrastructure. We gotta get someone up there in the northern part of Canada. It's really cold in the northern part of Canada, but we gotta get someone up there to protect those fat minerals and resources. Because what if the Russians want to rip Canada off and just come in and just take them, right? What are we like? We got no one up there. We got maybe like one guy. he's got, he's got his like really his Tim Hortons coffee cup is probably frozen. He's in like a little hut, a little station in the northern part of Canada. He sees the Russians coming and he's like, they're here. The Russians are coming. Then he calls Bill over and anyways. So we got no one up there. We got no one in the northern part of Canada protecting these valuable minerals and resources. And anyone could just take, even the Americans. I mean, it doesn't have to be the Russians. The Chinese could swoop in and take these valuable Canadian minerals and resources. The Russians, the Americans could even swoop in. Not trying to give any ideas to Americans, but pretty much like Canada's defenseless up there. If the Americans just went in and wanted to just take those valuable minerals and Canadian resources, the Americans could. Like theoretically, Canada can't do shit. If the Americans wanted to just take those valuable minerals and resources in the northern part of Canada, they could. Now, if America wanted to make Canada the 51st state, that's more complicated, obviously, because it's harder to take over a whole country, but it would be really easy for Americans to just send their warships, whatever, go in, mine those valuable Canadian minerals and resources, just take them, and then take them back to the United States. And Americans are thugs and thieves. I got robbed by Americans. When I was in America, well, I told you I went to Detroit, but anyways, when I was in America, it wasn't only Detroit, but anyways, when I was in America, the Americans robbed me. So the Americans love stealing money from people. So anyways, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't even Russia or China. I wouldn't be surprised if the Americans went in with their warship, whatever, their submarine, whatever. They went to the northern part of Canada and they mined those minerals and resources. They took those valuable Canadian minerals and resources and just went back to the United States with that money. Just ran off with the loot back to the United States. Yeah, Dan. So I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on I did say I'm not an expert on mining, but thank you for the comment. I'll pin your comment because that's good. I didn't know that about mining. But yeah, I'm not an expert on mining. Yeah, so I was robbed, right? So those they were thieving Americans. They were. I was in the United States, so I was at an American casino. I didn't say run by black people, or I guess now I did. Okay, no, I didn't say run by black people. Anyways, I was at a casino in the United States, and they watch you while you play. It's really creepy. Anyways, so I went in and I was just I needed a vacation because my grandmother had died from cancer. I wasn't feeling well. I was depressed. I had not taken a vacation in 7 years. Like literally, I had not taken a vacation in 7 years. Because whenever I took my vacation days, I just stayed home. I never actually went out. So just for 7 years, whenever I took my vacation time, I just stayed home. And so my grandmother had passed away from cancer, and I went to the United States on kind of vacation. I went to a casino. I didn't really like casinos, but I didn't want to go to Disneyland, right? I'm not like one of those weirdos that likes to go to Disneyland. I don't go to Disneyland, so I'm not a weirdo that goes to Disneyland. So I went to a casino. I went to a casino in America. I didn't say the casino was run by black people, but anyways, I didn't. I didn't say that. So no one's gonna come and be like, "Oh, he said he went to a casino run by black people." I didn't say that, even though it's true. Anyways, and I was in there playing, and like they're scammers in there, right? So one guy comes over to me and he's like, "Can I have $2? Can I have $2? Can I have $2?" And I'm like, dude, I'm like down 1,000. And I only got like 50 bucks left in there. I'm down 1,000. I only got 50 bucks left in there. I can't even afford to give myself $2 at this point. So no. I go to look back at my slot machine. It's cashed out. That sneaky mother came over. Can I have $2? Can I have $2? I go to turn over him to tell my best jokes, you know, and I go tell I just it just takes a second just to turn away from your slot machine. Looked at the guy, said, "No, I'm not gonna give you $2. I'm down 1,000. I only have 50 bucks in now in the machine. I'm pretty much like I can't even afford to give myself $2." It just takes a second to turn away. Just I didn't like even move my whole body. I just moved my head to turn to look at the guy who was like, "Can I have $2? Can I have $2?" And I said, no, because he was annoying me, and he kept saying, "Can I have $2? Can I have $2?" It's really annoying if someone just kept saying, Can I have $2?" Anyways, so I looked at him. I'm like, no. I go to look back at my slot machine, and my $50 that was in there is gone. Someone had cashed out my slot machine. I go to call like the supervisor on duty, who's a sister, who is a sister, not like a British sister, like a Brit, but she's a sister, you know what I mean? And she walks over, she's like, what's the issue, sir? What's the issue? I'm like 99% sure that someone cashed out my machine and stole my $50. She's like, do you have any proof? I'm like, I mean, that's kind of your job. I mean, you have security cameras in the casino. The casino's full of cameras. We could just look at the cameras and see if someone cashed out my machine while I was distracted by the guy that came over and was like, can I have $2? Can I have $2? She's like, sir, the next time you contact casino security, you better have proof. I'm like, was I supposed to be strapped with a body camera? Should I be walking around with a body camera in a casino? Should I have a film crew? Should it be like Dateline? Should I have a film crew that like is watching while I play and like recording everything? I thought the casinos, you have cameras. The casinos would see if someone ripped me off. So obviously, she wasn't gonna rat on her brother, whatever. So that was one incident. And then there were two other incidents where I was like, one time I won a jackpot and like my machine went crazy, won a jackpot. And I was like, thank God I won some of my money back because I'm down a lot of money. And I won a jackpot. And then I was like so happy. Before I could even see how much money I won on the jackpot, because the machine was lighting up and going over, suddenly someone put a bag over my head. And I'm like struggling with a bag and I hear them laughing. The bag's over my head. I'm struggling. I literally heard the guy cash out my machine, the other guy. So one of the thugs put a bag over my head. The other one went and cashed out my machine while the bag was over my head. Then I see them running and laughing because the other guy, he finally takes the bag over my head. He takes it off. And then I see the thugs. I didn't say that they were black. Even though they were. I didn't say that they were black. So no one come in and said, oh, he said they were black. He said the thug. No, I didn't. I didn't say that. Even though anyways. So I didn't say that the thugs were black. But anyways, I saw them running and they were like laughing their asses off. They literally one of them put a bag over my head. The other one cashed out my slot machine while the bag was over my head, and they were running laughing with my with the ticket. And I don't even know how much money I won. They could have been running off with $200. They could have been running off with $2,000. I don't even know. And then of course I called security right away because someone put a bag over my head. I'm like, I'm about to call the police. So I'm about to call the police and be like, if casino security doesn't do nothing about this time, especially, I'm about to call the police. So casino security comes over and again is like, do you have any proof? I'm like, how could I have, they put a bag over my head. What do you have? You have cameras in the casino. You could see what's going on. So I said, I'm calling the police this time. So I go to call the police and they're brothers and sisters and they pick up the phone and I say to the police, like, I was in the casino. The casino has all these security cameras. We could just look at the security cameras. And I said, can you come over? And like someone put a bag over my head. The other one cashed out my machine. They ran off with my money. And I said this to the police and they're like, do you have any proof? I'm like, the casino has cameras. They're like, okay, get a subpoena, hire a lawyer, pay $20,000, go to a lawyer, get a subpoena, get a court subpoena, and then make the casino, assuming that the casino security didn't already delete the camera footage, assuming that casino security didn't, you're going to have to, this is a civil lawsuit, this is a civil matter, sir, don't take that tone with me. I'm sorry that someone put a bag over your head and stole your money. But this is a civil matter, sir. You're going to have to hire a lawyer. You're going to have to sue them, get a subpoena for the court, for the casino security camera footage, sir. I'm like, you're the police. You're the police. You could just come, demand that this casino security show you the camera footage, which would clearly show that these thugs, one of them put a bag over my head, the other one cashed on my sleeve, and they went laughing. Like, how could you do this to a Canadian tourist, right? They're like, sir, don't take your tone with me. It's not our fault you're from Canada. Go back to Canada. If you don't like America, go back to Canada. Okay. So anyways. So yeah, I was robbed by Americans. And I was like, I can't believe that we would be treated like this. Canada, Canada, the country that definitely wasn't behind 9/11, I can't believe that Americans would treat Canadians like this. Canada, the country that definitely had nothing to do with 9/11. Canada, okay, I'm overselling it. Anyways, Canada are trusted American allies who had nothing to do with 9/11, as far as I know. Canada, which had nothing to do with 9/11, as far as we know. I can't believe the Americans would treat Canadians like this. Or maybe they're just me because I'm a homosexual and whatever, and they don't like me. So, yeah, I was robbed. I should have gone to Germany. Now the Germans are always up to something. I mean, I don't think anyone trusts the Germans after World War II. I mean, my father said, he said they won't even let Germany have an army. After World War II, they wouldn't even let the Germans have an army for like many years. I'm like, kind of agree with that one. I mean, after World War II, would anyone trust the Germans? So the Germans are always up to something. The Germans would never hire me, but anyways. So I was talking with my German friends, and because I'm like, I know the Germans are always up to something. And I was saying, like, what do you guys think? Like, what's gonna be the purge, the next purge, right? Because if you notice, did you watch those purge movies? You know those purge movies where they purge a bunch of people. I'm like, can you Germans? I have a feeling that you Germans, you're gonna know when the next purge is gonna happen and who's gonna be purged. Can you like tell me in advance if they're planning to purge me? Can you tell me so I can like, can I've been helping I've been such great friends to the German people for so long. If they're ever planning to do like a big purge, like they did in World War II, because World War II was a big purge, World War One was a purge, right? The Renaissance, the French Renaissance with the Black Plague, where they purged all those people. So obviously the bubonic plague, bubonic, is that how you say? Sounds French, bubonic, sounds French. The bubonic plague, whatever, the Black Death, where they purged all those people with the disease. In World War One, World War Two, they purged people, etc. They're purging people in Palestine right now. I was telling my German friends, I'm like, if they're ever planning to do a big purge and you see my name on the list, can you tell me? I don't want to be end up in one of those purge movies. Anyways, Did anyone see pictures of the German soldiers in World War II? Those guys were like tall and strong with big muscles. The German men, those guys were gorgeous. I almost said the Nazis were gorgeous. They were like did you see pictures of the German soldiers in World War II? Like those guys were like so good looking. Like they were handsome. They were tall with but they were. No, I didn't say that the Nazis were gorgeous. I never said that. Don't put words in my mouth. But did you see pictures? Did anyone see pictures of the German soldiers from World War II? Like, those were men. Like, those are strong, tall, masculine, really strong men. Like, I'm not a Nazi. Anyone thinks I'm right. Hello, welcome, Cindy. Cindy said, I still wouldn't vote for him. We know Trump is on the list more than once. Thank you, Cindy, for your comment. Yeah, honestly, JD Vance, if JD Vance wants the only chance that JD Vance has to be president in 2028 is if he leaks the Epstein list. Like, seriously, that's his only chance at this point because how could you vote for JD Vance when he was, if he becomes complicit in the cover up of the Epstein stuff? So, so I don't know who's still in here, but basically, JD Vance, he's gonna um he's gonna have a hard time in 2028 because, and actually, he's gonna have a hard time now because, like the scrutiny that he's gonna come out under, he has the opportunity to leak the Epstein list, and he either has two choices: either he covers for Trump or he doesn't. So, I mean, if he covers for Trump, he's not gonna look good. So.